metodológica. Este painel é, de certa forma, uma continuação da discussão sobre questões metodológicas, mas ele propõe uma reflexão crítica sobre as hierarquias de conhecimento e as práticas de desenvolvimento ainda enraizadas em epistemologias coloniais e abordagens neoliberais. Num contexto pós-colonial marcado por desigualdade, pobreza, exclusão, mudança climática e conflito, as respostas dominadas pelo norte global continuam frequentemente a privilegiar a assistência em detrimento de soluções emancipatórias e centradas nas comunidades. Este é o argumento deste painel. Neste sentido, destaca-se a importância de pesquisa, ação participativa como estratégia que valoriza os saberes locais e promove formas colaborativas de consciencialização e mobilização social. As comunicações do painel exploram, a partir de experiências concretas em Moçambique e noutras realidades africanas, a forma como epistemologias situadas e metodologias participativas podem contribuir para reimaginar o desenvolvimento e a transformação social. Os trabalhos abordam desde o papel das metodologias colaborativas em contextos de crise climática e conflito, até a análise crítica das relações entre conhecimento acadêmico, ativismo e vozes marginalizadas. Neste painel, tenho a honra de estar acompanhada pelas pessoas que passarei a chamar em seguida. Para nos apresentar uma comunicação sobre descolonizar, na verdade é um questionamento sobre a possibilidade de descolonizar métodos de pesquisa em África, vamos ter Thenjiwe Emily Major, da Universidade de Botsuana. Por favor, queira se juntar a mim. Thenjiwe Emily Major é professora associada no Departamento de Fundamentos da Educação da Universidade de Botsuana. É doutorada pela Ball State University, nos Estados Unidos, investiga metodologias de pesquisa e avaliação baseadas em saberes indígenas, destacando práticas críticas culturalmente relevantes e socialmente responsáveis no ensino superior. Thank you very much for joining us. Em seguida, com uma comunicação intitulada Desenvolvimento como Resistência, construindo uma economia solidária em meio à crise pós-colonial, temos um conjunto de painelistas, nomeadamente Hafiz Jamou, Tanja Kleibek, eu nunca sei pronunciar o nome da Tanja, que nos vão falar sobre vão apresentar perspectivas comunitárias de resposta, de construção de economias solidárias. Por favor, junte-se, por favor. Desculpa. Falta uma cadeira, sim. Falta-nos uma cadeira. Eu vou buscar... Não, na verdade, eu é que estou sentada. Não, fica, deixa estar. E agora, desculpem, eu vou passar a chamar o nosso terceiro painelista, que é o Sr. Wilson. Deixem-me pôr aqui, antes que eu me caia. Eu fico aqui porque aquele lugar é para si. Desculpem. Ok. Que é o Dr. Wilson, que vai nos falar sobre descolonização de conhecimentos sobre a escravatura no norte de Moçambique por meio de narrativas. Dr. Wilson Nikakela, por favor, junte-se a nós. É docente da Universidade de Lírio, onde dirige a Faculdade de Ciências Sociais e Humanas, é doutorado em Ciências da Educação e dedica-se à etnopedagogia, História da Educação e Ensino Superior. Desculpem-me. Vou agora passar a chamar Rónia Sengfelder, que também faz parte da equipe que vai apresentar sobre desenvolvimento como resistência. Rónia é docente na... Perdão. Desculpem-me, eu atrapalhei-me ali com a história das cadeiras. Eu não apresentei a todos devidamente. Hafiz Jamu é ativista comunitário da Confraria Quadria Bagdad, da ilha de Moçambique. Tanja é docente da Universidade Técnica de Würzburg, Schweinfurt, investigando migração, mobilidade, sociedade civil e governação, com foco em abordagens pós-coloniais e economia política. Rónia é docente na mesma universidade, com MA em Ciências Sociais e Educacionais pela Universidade de Munique. As suas áreas de interesse incluem pesquisação participativa, direitos humanos e mudanças climáticas. Muito obrigada. Deem as boas-vindas comigo aos meus companheiros e companheiras de painel, com uma salva de palmas para ajudá-los a relaxar. Bem, nós teremos 3 comunicações, uma delas será feita por 3 painelistas. Bem? Então, a primeira, eu gostaria de convidar a doutora Major para fazer a sua apresentação. Tem 15 minutos para fazer a sua apresentação. Peço... já está aqui atrás. Obrigada. Desculpa, tem que ter um microfone. You need microphone. E eu irei sinalizando. Por favor, olhem para mim, eu estarei sentada ali. Eu irei sinalizando o tempo que vocês têm, tá bem? Please, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so very much for inviting me to this conference. I've never presented in a conference that is neither Anglophone or Francophone. So that's the first time. And I was asking myself, as mostly I used to communicate with Tanya, whether our presentation will really be relevant to this group. But because we are all academics and we are all in Africa, you will understand that what I'm presenting is what we are presently working on or dealing with in our institutions. Part of it is coming up with indigenous research methodologies and frameworks that are relevant to the African context. Let me be honest with you. When we were developing this, we only considered Anglophone and Francophone countries. We never really looked at countries that were colonized by Portugal. And when we were invited, I just said, let's take this opportunity. Maybe we can learn something. And it has been difficult because we can't read Portuguese. So we have been struggling really to get enough content. But what I'll be presenting basically is what we have been working on with Anglophone and Francophone countries in trying to develop methods and frameworks that are relevant to the African context. And we are doing these projects because we are also being sponsored by the MasterCard Foundation, having noticed that research that we do in Africa or evaluation that we do in Africa, at the end of the day, we don't really produce the rightful solutions because we are adapting or taking Western ways of thinking, Western ways of realities, Western values, and applying them in our African context, which in most cases, they don't work for Africans. So we are trying to come up with methodologies and frameworks that will address the realities of African people, which will consider the knowledge of African people and also value that knowledge as knowledge that is critical and that is important. And also the values that what African people do value. What is it that we refer to as indigenous? Indigenous, you know, I usually tell people that as a philosopher, I don't believe in someone defining a word for me. Oh, yeah. Which one? Next up, yeah. Okay. Yes, I was just saying that as a philosopher, I prefer defining my own words in according to my own understanding, so that when I present, I know exactly what is it that I'm talking about. So if my indigenous definition doesn't fit yours or doesn't fit your book that you are reading, you'll have to understand from that perspective. We see indigenous as originating in and characteristics of a particular region or a country or a native, something that exists naturally. What is the present thinking in research? Because we do a lot of research as academics, as scholars. What is the present thinking? And I just decided to pick a quotation from Foucault to say, what we know and how we know is grounded in the shifting and diverse historical human practices and politics and power in constant struggle, conflict, compromise, and negotiation. Whichever group is strongest establishes its own rules on what can be known and how it can be known. In other words, when we are saying those people who have the power, they have the power to control what is it that we have to know and how you have to know it. So that's the present thinking that we have even in research presently. Why is indigenous knowledge research critical for Africans, especially for us, these countries that were colonized? Remember, I'm coming from Botswana. Botswana is an Anglophone, is a country that was colonized by Britain. So we are saying we are trying to decolonize our minds so that we think like Africans, we do things like Africans so that we understand who we are. So we are saying indigenous people's interests, knowledge, and experiences must be at the center of research methodologies and construction of knowledge about indigenous people. I got that as a quotation. The formerly colonized, historical, marginalized. You want to make it big? Okay. Are increasingly becoming researchers of their own lives and histories. We are saying, I was listening to the presenters that they gained their PhDs outside Mozambique. Yes, we are being learned, we are becoming learned, and we are starting to do research, and we are doing our own research, and we are writing our own histories, which is perfect. So can we be comfortable living our own indigeneity, living our own at the door when we enter into the academic field? That's the question that we usually ask ourselves. When we go into the academic, do we live who we are and we adapt other people's ways of thinking? Can we be comfortable participating in the marginalization, silencing, and humiliation of ourselves when other people research on us and they come up with the data that is really marginalizing us, is putting us as a second-class citizens? Are we comfortable as academicians to be there? Indigenous people have been over-researched. Little thought given to cultural safe methods of engagement. You know, many people, many grants. I'm working on grants. That's what I do most of the time. I'm working on grants. These are research grants. But all these grants that we are doing, we just adopt. Somebody dictates the type of method that we are going to use, the type of paradigm that we are going to use. And are we comfortable doing that? That's the reason why we are coming up with our own, what we are going to call our own indigenous frameworks and our own African indigenous methodologies. I'm not sure if I'm moving correctly or what. Why is it not moving? Okay. Yeah. This one. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Thank you. I'm someone who speaks very fast. Thank you. Marginalization of the other by the mainstream in research. Usually I like quotes. I say, no race can grow fat that feeds on the crumbs that fall from the tables of others. We do a top-down research approach which is predominantly research centric.